Hello, listeners, and welcome to the ECPPS show here on WRVS 89.9. I'm your host, Clay Mercer, and we're happy to be with you because there's so much happening in the Elizabeth City Pasquotank Public School System that we want you all to know about. And each and every month, this is the show that will give you that information. And plus, we're going to have a lot of fun with our co-host. And with me right now is Board Chair, Ms. Angela Cobb, and Dr. Keith Parker, who is the Superintendent of ECPPS. Thank you both for joining us here today. Thank you so much for making this show happen. I know the listeners are going to benefit from it. And I'd like to start off with a few introductions, especially to listeners who may not know very much about the both of you. Angela, I'll start with you. Talk a little bit about your humble beginnings here in Northeastern North Carolina and your journey to becoming the board chair.
Absolutely. Well, I am a hometown girl, born and bred in Elizabeth City. I've lived here pretty much all my life until I went off to college. I have a bachelor's and a graduate degree from East Carolina University in English education, and started out my career in education as an English teacher. Worked in the field of education for almost 30 years. The majority of that time spent here in Elizabeth City, either with ECPPS or College of the Albemarle. I actually worked at both. Around 2006, I decided to go back to school right here at Elizabeth City State University and got my master's degree in school administration, and worked the last about 7 years of my career in education as a school administrator. I was the principal at Weeksville Elementary for a couple years, and then I retired from being the principal at Northeastern High School. So that's pretty much my background. And when I retired during COVID, and I've always felt like I had more that I wanted to do. I wasn't finished yet. And somebody at one time just kind of off the cuff suggested, you should run for school board. And at the time I was like, no, I don't think so. But after being separated from the school system for about 6 months, I decided, yeah, maybe I should. Yeah. And so here I am.
How did that experience help you as far as your duties as board chair right now?
It is a completely different experience when you are in a board seat than when you are a working employee for an educational system. And both experiences, I think, help make a person more well-rounded and being able to understand two sides of the coin, basically. I had a lot of experience in the trenches with Elizabeth City Pasquotank Public Schools, being a teacher, being graduation project coordinator. I also did AIG facilitator for a little while before I went into administration. So I knew a lot about what it was like to work in a school district. I also knew a lot about the pulse of the school district and the culture of the school district, and so I knew how people felt. And going into the board seat, that gave me an advantage because I could see it from the other side because I was still so fresh out of being in that role, in that position. I had no idea what being on the board was going to be like, and I had a concept of what I thought it was going to be like. I had a concept of what I thought the board did. It was wrong. It really was. There's so much more that a board does, and there's so much more investment by board members in our school district of their own time, of their own money, of their own thought processes, and I really just didn't know it until I got into it. So I think my preparation in education helped me because I do understand a lot of the educational pieces that are going on. I think that has given me an advantage. And I say this everywhere I go, our whole board is made up of either former educators, people that train educators or work with children, graduates of Northeastern High School. So, we're unique in the fact that we all are vested in children and in our community.
Yeah, one thing I've known about you over the years is you've understood the pulse of the community and the students and the families in this area. So that's been a big positive, and I think it's paid dividends for everybody within ECPPS. So thank you for the job that you have done up to this point.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure and my honor to be able to do this kind of job for the kids in our community every day.
Love to hear it. Dr. Parker, same question to you. Who is this guy we know as the superintendent of ECPPS? Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, Clay, thank you for inviting us to come, and it's just a pleasure to be able to sit down with Chair Cobb and talk about some of the things we love, our schools, and so what a pleasure to be here today. And Elijah, who's joining us as well down here. So I like Angela have spent my career in a schoolhouse, doing something associated with a schoolhouse after hours, or doing something to help kids. And so that's the experience I bring to the space. But I started my career in Tarboro in Pine Tops, North Carolina at Southwest Edgecombe High School. Was a high school social studies teacher, became a school principal, was a K-8 principal, worked in Dare County as director, assistant soup, and then came to Elizabeth City in 2022 and as superintendent. And one of the things I love about Elizabeth City is it's a place where people take care of each other, and you can be in the grocery store and run into the board chair and talk to her on a first name basis. You can see the mayor walking down the downtown street. You can talk to a county commissioner, a teacher, and we're really a place where people care about each other in their community. And when I moved here in 2022, I never got a feeling whatsoever that anybody was interested in how long I had lived in Elizabeth City. They were interested in what can we do together, what can we get to work on. And I think that really is the spirit of our great city, is people can come from all over and be accepted into the family and just get to work. And so, in that spirit, I think we're seeing some of that drive the energy in our schools, and I'm so thrilled to be a part of the community and some of the work that we're doing.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you here also. And again, it's just a welcoming feeling that I get from you, and everyone I talk to about you feels the same way. You seem like you just bring them in with your conversation, your demeanor, and again, I think that's been a big benefit for everyone here at ECPPS. Now, listeners, I want to remind you that this is a great opportunity for you to have some of your questions answered by Superintendent Parker or Chair Cobb. All you have to do is send an email to WRVS-FM@gmail.com. That's WRVS-FM@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to answer your questions every month during the ECPPS show and the ECPPS podcast. Now, Chair Cobb, I want to come back to you for a moment. When the 2025 school year started, you promoted a trifecta of guiding principles for each school to prioritize safety, wellness, and a good, strong education. Speak on the benefits of each of those principles that they could have on the school system.
Well, those principles, it's kind of funny because those principles have kind of been like guiding principles in my own life. When I was growing up, my mom was a nurse, so there's your wellness piece. My dad was a police officer for Elizabeth City Police Department and later Pasquotank Sheriff's Department, so there is your safety piece. And then I guess I'll be the educational piece with my career in education. I feel like, and I've always felt like, that our students have got to feel safe, they have to be well, and those have to be in place before they have the opportunity to learn. Mm-hmm. And so those three pieces, we have a lot of community buy-in and a lot of community engagement with our local law enforcement. Our school resource officers are amazing.
Yeah, they really are.
I've worked with school resource officers. I've had an opportunity my school resource officer at Northeastern High School and I graduated from high school together. Mm-hmm. So we were in the same class. My dad trained him, so that connection was there. And I knew, as I hope all of our school principals know right now, if we needed something, we had their backing. Mm-hmm. Elizabeth City Police Department, Pasquotank County Sheriff's Department are wonderful in making sure that they partner with us to make sure that our schools are safe. This initiative with our athletic events is just another piece out there that we are reacting proactively to make sure that our students and our community are safe at these events. We don't want something to happen in our community and then we have to react to it. And as far as wellness goes, our partnerships with some of our wellness entities, especially Centera, are going to give us opportunities to take care of our students. Healthy students are going to have more opportunities to learn. Students that aren't healthy, that are out of school sick, that are out of school taking care of sick family members, they're going to be missing vital instruction and vital opportunities. And so by getting on the bandwagon to keep them well, we're actually giving them more of a shot to get a better education. And ultimately, that's what we want. We want our students to be well educated. I will tell you, it's a very humbling experience to go to your doctor's office in Elizabeth City, and the nurse that is doing your vitals and taking your information was your student at high school. And that is what we want for our community. We want to educate our students, and then we want them to stay here, and we want them to give back to Elizabeth City, Pasquotank County. And so our future doctors, car mechanics, HVAC techs, you name it, they're in our school district right now, and we want to keep them here, and we want them to be the best of the best.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for that. Speaking a little bit about you as the chair of the board, and of course, we had a recent Board of Education meeting just this past on September 22nd. Before we get to the superintendent's report, because I do want to kind of put a little emphasis on that, let's highlight some of the other moments from the meeting. And you and I were talking before we started recording that during these Board of Education meetings, we highlight some of the schools and what they're doing. And P.W. Moore was highlighted in this past meeting. Speak a little bit about what that was about.
P.W. Moore was highlighted. P.W. Moore has a new principal. She was the assistant principal last year, Marian Everett, and she's the new principal now. And she has brought an energy and an enthusiasm, and she had an opportunity last night to highlight 3 of her employees that she wanted to just put in the spotlight to show their dedication and their commitment to P.W. Moore. Teachers and educational personnel, whether it's educational support people, whatever, they're some of the hardest working people that you would ever meet. And a lot of times, if you were to put a value on what they do, nobody could afford them. Wow. So being able to have the opportunity for Miss Everett to highlight those. She also wanted to highlight her custodial staff, but they were still at work. So she couldn't recognize them personally, but she did mention them. And, that's a prime example right there of commitment and dedication. I mean, they're still at work, so you can't recognize them in person, but we're still going to shout them out. And then they shared their instructional highlights video, which was amazing, and talked about the initiatives and things. And you could just, by watching the video, Miss Everett started the video off with these flashing blue glasses on her head, which I loved. And you could just feel the energy in that school from that video. It was awesome.
It was a really good video. And I hope that we get to see more of that as these meetings continue, because it does highlight what these schools are doing. And, the individual, we talk about the custodial staff. There's so many people who may not get highlighted on a regular basis, but again, it's a team effort, just like in sports. It's a team effort in the school system also. So other highlights from the Board of Education meeting that we just had.
We had our employee in our finance department, Miss Ashley Nixon, was highlighted for completing an NC-ASBO training course, and that's the state agency that supports finance departments. So she got a certification, and that was, I think, we had 2 recognitions, Ashley and then P.W. Moore, I think were the 2 we had there.
And we usually do those recognitions monthly. Okay. So it may be that there may be a school or 2 schools and maybe a department. It just depends. A lot of it, we usually do the schools every month. A lot of the other recognitions depend on what happens from the day of the board meeting to the day of the board meeting, because we may have students in a club that go to a competition that win, or we may have a band that goes to a competition and gets a superior rating, and then usually those students are recognized, or that band comes to play, or whatever we can do, within that time. So sometimes the recognitions we don't know really, because they're fluid, and it just but we try to recognize the good things going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things going on, and that's what this show is about. We're going to highlight some of those great things. While we have a little bit of time, back on September 9th, I want to bring a little bit of attention to this. ECPPS held a press conference that promoted the academic improvement of students throughout the district. You also made a statement, Dr. Parker, that 2025-26 will be a year that will be remembered. I get the sense that you might be a psychic, that you can kind of see ahead, but that's okay. What have you seen that gives you that confidence that this will be a very special school year?
Yeah, well, thank you for referencing the press conference there, Clay, and I appreciate you giving us an opportunity to speak on that. And we were just really fortunate and excited to be able to share what has been some significant gains that our students and teachers have made over the past several years. And Chair Cobb had a great analogy about, we're, we play the long game, and that is a part of what the work is when you work with children. The road, I think, to the mountaintop is a winding road. It's not a straight road. And so, we're very intentional about celebrating where we make gains, but also recognizing areas where we're still not where we want to be. And I think you can have both of those things at the same time. And that's just a reality of working with people and working with children and young people. And so areas that we're really proud of is Northeastern High School made some significant gains this year. They had been last year a D school, and about 40% of their students had been made a proficient score on the state exams. This year, they moved up to a C school, and a little over 60% of their students met proficiency. So they really moved at about a 20-point gain, which is a significant amount of improvement in one school year. So really excited about them. They jumped to letter grade. Really proud of Elizabeth City Middle School, who moved from a D last year to a C this year as well, having some pretty big gains there. So proud of those two schools. 2022, we had 8 of our 12 assessed schools. 8 of our 12 schools were considered low-performing schools, meaning they were D or F or did not meet growth by the state measurements. In fact, the state had designated the entire district as a low-performing district because over half of the schools were in low-performing status. And we have reduced those numbers of low-performing schools significantly, going from 8 to 2 and now 3 this year. And so that's a huge commitment on behalf of our educators. But as we've said, we're not going to stop until we have 12 A schools that exceed growth. We believe in setting the highest goal and then working toward it, and that's what we're about. So we celebrate when we have celebrations, and we do, and then areas to improve, we're going to focus on that. 3 schools that we're focused on really intensive support this year, our 3 low-performing schools are P.W. Moore, Sheep Harney Elementary, and then River Road Middle School. And all 3 of those schools have incredible teachers. They have students that are intelligent, hardworking, smart. Our goal is to continue to support principals and teachers so we connect the dots to line up the hard work that our folks are doing and be strategic and intentional. And we're already seeing gains in those schools as the school year has started off here. So I'm hugely encouraged. And when I made the comment about this is a year for us to watch, it is that we're working toward a goal of not having a single low-performing school, and then moving on to increasing the number of A and B schools that we have. So we're on track to do that, and as that winding road continues, we're moving toward the mountaintop, and that's what our focus is.
2 of the programs that I'm excited about, and I think a lot of people are getting excited about, in fact, me and Ms. Cobb was talking about this earlier, the Spanish dual language immersion and the new micro school are 2 areas I want to focus on. Let's focus on the micro school first. Explain to the listeners what the micro school is and how it benefits the student.
Yeah, well, we're so excited talking about the micro school, and we've got Elijah here who can speak some to his experience as a student in the micro school. But one of the things that our listeners could think about what a micro school is, it's a combination of a lot of different things. Some folks may recognize the term Montessori school, which were schools where students sort of learned through projects and they weren't confined to age and grade level. There's that concept that is in a micro school. There is definitely the concept of learning by doing, project-based learning. That is certainly a key component of it. And then a smaller class size, a smaller environment where students can really learn as a school, not a class. And we learned a lot about micro schools over the past 2 years. And Angela can speak to this and is prepared to talk about a visit we took to Austin, Texas. And right now in the United States, Austin is sort of becoming known as an innovation hub in a lot of areas, the tech sector. But also Austin is an innovation hub with schooling. And so we visited some really creative micro schools. What we found that right now in the United States, a majority of the most creative, innovative micro schools exist primarily in private school sectors. And so what our goal has been is to replicate that quality experience that we've seen in $20,000, $30,000 a year tuition private schools, to replicate that in the public school, of course, with no cost to our families, but also replicate the quality of the experience. And we saw some really inspiring micro schools in Austin when we visited a year ago. We took a lot of that work back here, and we've launched our first micro school. To our knowledge, it's the first school of its kind in the state that exists in a public school.
Wow.
And so we're really excited about that. And Angela went on a visit with us along with some of our educators and board members. So you could certainly reflect on the experiences.
I definitely want to hear how eye-opening this trip was for you.
So it was beyond amazing. I mean, it was just something else. The one takeaway I think that I could bring back from both schools that we went to, the teachers, the educators were more in a facilitator role, and on the back burner, the students were the ones that they did their own plotting of their own educational experience. Now, when I say that, there were still guidelines, of course. It was our micro school, our students at our micro school still get standard course of study instruction. But these students were tackling real world problems that were it was just unbelievable. We saw a group of students in a science class who had tackled a problem about the environment and what would happen in the climate if this element happened or if this situation happened. And they did projects and they predicted how to fix things. And it was incredible. And they had a situation, one school they raised chickens. And they had chicken coops, and they were outside barefooted, literally. But they took the science that they were learning and applied that to what to do. They took math that they were learning. They took the reading element, and they incorporated all of these educational structures and strategies into the projects that they were working on. And so I came back from Austin, and I was really energized about it and very excited about it. And then we have an innovation team in our district. We have a group of professionals in our district that work on curriculum and instruction and professional development, and they have really put a lot of effort and energy in getting these initiatives off the ground, like the micro school.
Like a research and design team,
Understood.
an R&D.
Okay.
They research innovative, out of the box.
And they've put a lot of energy and drive and focus into the micro school. And so when you look, even things like the seating, it's not a traditional row of desk kind of seating. There's chairs or couches and you know, the old school teacher in me, I walked into that first classroom, and there were kids, you know, with their shoes off, and they were sitting Indian style on the floor, leaned up against the wall, or there were. But that didn't matter, you know, that they were so engaged. And that was the one thing that I thought, wow, it was almost like some of the barriers had been taken away from, you don't have to sit in this seat, or you don't have to. That doesn't necessarily mean there's a disruptive environment going on in a classroom. What that might mean is that there's a thinking environment going on in that classroom. But it was just amazing to see. And then now, our design team has taken and gleaned like the best of everything, and they have created this micro school that the students are getting curriculum instruction, but they are also working on hands-on projects, they go into town. They have their own school bus.
Wow.
And their administrator has her license. So she can get on the bus, put them on the bus, and they can go.
Yeah.
And so
there's only 25 kids in the school, so the whole school can get on one
One bus.
and then they go where they want to.
Yeah.
But they go to Rick Anderson Fitness downtown, and they learn about cycling classes or weightlifting, and that's their part of their physical education. Sure. Or they go to Arts of the Albemarle and they do theater arts classes or music classes, and that's how they get some of that. And they're going to be working with the opportunity to work with businesses and learn about things. And Elijah came with us today because it gives him an opportunity to see what a radio station looks like. You know, before we leave, we're probably going to take some pictures that he can take back to school tomorrow and show his administrator knows he's here, but he can show, hey, I went to WRVS today, and this is what a radio station looks like, in case there's a student in there that has an interest in being in broadcasting. You know, so they look at the student interest too. They look at, like, what do they like, and how can they help a business, for instance. So it's pretty amazing.
Even with this trip, I know you said the micro schools were usually in a private type of setting. What made you think that this could work in a public setting? It just seems a little bit different than what you all saw in Austin. Yeah,
it's a good question. You know, it comes from 3 years ago where we spent over a year and a half just having a serious conversation with ourselves and our community and our families about what we want to be true for the public schools, you know, in the next decade, beyond, you know. And one of the things that really was a takeaway from that year-long conversation with the community is our families want the same quality and caliber of the educational experience that many of our fellow citizens and friends experience in urban areas. They want that same experience in a rural area, and they don't want to have to leave the rural area to go get it. You know, they want to live in Elizabeth City, which is an incredible place to live. You don't have the traffic of some of our urban neighbors. You don't have, you know, you get the small town benefits, but you also ought to be able to get a rich programmatic experience in public schools. And so we started thinking about how we could replicate that. And, you know, I think another part of what, you know, we've thought about here is the traditional school experience, as many of us knew, you know, it doesn't work for our kids today. And that doesn't mean that great teachers aren't doing great things every day. They are. The amazing teachers are working in a traditional model. And so what we've got to do is transform the model and get these great, amazing teachers we have to be able to be sort of loosed and not be confined by the model. The model of traditional school holds great teachers back. And so what we're trying to do is change the model so we can, you know, expand the reach of our teachers. And for an increasing number of our families, you know, we have to grapple with what are they looking for to meet their needs of their kids. And a serious conversation for us has been, as we look at families that over the course of the past decade, particularly the last 5 years, have left the public school system. You know, this is a trend across the country right now, because families have far more choices than, you know, we've had in the past 20 years. And so if a family has left the traditional public school system, they left for a reason. And we really got to grapple with, why was that? And a part of what that is, families are looking for choices, and if they don't find them in the traditional public school, they're going to leave to go find it. And so what our mission has been is to provide choices for families within the traditional public school system where they don't have to leave to go get a choice. And the micro school is a choice. We had over 120 families that applied. We only were able to take 25, so we had a lottery to be able to choose the students. We had high demand, continue to have high demand for this school. It will expand to grade 8, so it'll be grades 5 through 8. And what that tells us is families are looking for something different. They're looking for something new. They're looking for a choice. And our goal is to be able to give families choices within the traditional public school. And this is a great experiment for us to see what that looks like. That's a different model. Nothing like this exists that we can see. I mean, Elijah's PE class is Rick Anderson Fitness. Mm-hmm. His music class is Arts of the Albemarle. He's going to be working on a project this year with Water Street Realty where the students help manage an Airbnb that Heather has there. So that model just doesn't exist, and I think that type of experience is something that families are looking for, and it's our experiment to figure out how we can provide that type of experience for more kids as we look toward the future of the school system.
Well, I think a lot of families are also interested in the Spanish dual language immersion program, which I think a lot of people are getting excited about, especially as they learn more about it. Talk a little bit about how this benefits the students, but what you saw in the program, and maybe this was you saw it elsewhere, and then you said, hey, we need to bring it to Elizabeth City. We need to bring it to ECPPS and talk a little bit about how that became a reality here in this area.
Yeah, so if you think about it, the United States is really one of the only major industrialized countries where dual language instruction isn't a universal part of K-12 curriculum. And so there are huge benefits of speaking a second language. One, there are huge benefits if you learn it at a young age. And so there's something about being 3, 4, 5, 6 years old where you can just learn things by hearing. And so that's true for a second language. And so our dual language immersion program launches at grades K and 1, and students stay in a cohort up to 8th grade, where by around 3rd grade, they're spending half the day in Spanish and half the day in English, because English for the majority of our kids was their first language. So they spend 90% of their day in Spanish in grades K1 and 2 because they don't know Spanish. They're learning it. But by 3rd grade, they know 2 languages, and then it levels out half and half. And from 3rd grade to 8th grade, they're half and half. They spend half the day in Spanish, half the day in English. But by the time they get to middle school, they're fully biliterate. They write essays in Spanish. They read novels in Spanish. They write essays in English. They can switch between 2 languages on an academic level as if they had learned both as their first language. You can't. It's a lot harder to get to that point if you learn a second language when you're older. And so that's the benefit of going into the language earlier. But we had on August 25th, we had our kindergartners roll up on the first day of school. And for those kindergartners, it was their first day in school in their life, unless they had been in our pre-K program. But when those kindergartners graduate from us, high school, it'll be the year 2038. That's when the current incoming class of kindergartners will graduate high school. Who in the world knows what 2038 will be like? We don't know. But I can guarantee you that for our students that will be graduating fully bilingual in English and Spanish, they will automatically rise to the top of application list, scholarship list, college application, and many of them can come to ECSU and be a pilot, but they'll be able to go on that intercom on the plane and speak 2 languages. Many of them will go to Centera and work in the healthcare profession, but they'll be able to talk to a patient in Spanish and English. Many of them be firefighters, police officers. Imagine the benefit of being a police officer right now and being able to be fully bilingual in English and Spanish. Many of whom will stay in Elizabeth City and be teachers, but be able to speak 2 languages. And so whatever the world's like in 2038, who knows? But I can guarantee you that the skill of being bilingual is a skill that will help our kids no matter what that world looks like. And so we're thinking about that. What do we do now to help kids be successful in a world we can't even predict? And being able to speak 2 languages, I think, is a major milestone. And our kids don't have to leave Elizabeth City to get that. It's more common in urban areas. Right now, you can live in Elizabeth City and you can get a program like this, and you don't have to travel to an urban area. And that's something we're proud of.
I love that. And Angela, you and I were talking a little bit about some of the opportunities that this opens up for the students that are in this program. Speak about some of those opportunities that could be available to them.
Well, you think about the fact that when these kids do get to middle school, like Dr. Parker said, they're going to be biliterate. They're already going to probably have surpassed your traditional model of being able to take a Spanish 1 or Spanish 2. They even probably could have an opportunity in high school to become translators. And, take college classes early on in high school because we literally won't have any kind of class to give them that they're not already probably overqualified to take. And so there are so many opportunities that these students will have. We went on an inspiration trip to Greensboro, and I was lucky enough to go, and I went in a kindergarten class. Now imagine a kindergarten class on the first day of school, all the bright colors and the signage and everything's labeled, and you walk in there and everything was in Spanish. I took Latin in high school, so I know no Spanish. And so everything was in Spanish, all the pretty colored signs and all the words. And we went in groups, and I went in, and I had a couple of high school students with me that I actually had been one of their principals when he was in elementary school. And these students were listening to the teacher who spoke nothing but Spanish, and they were responding in Spanish, and the high school kids were looking at me going, oh my goodness. And when we walked out, the response, they're speaking just as much as we're speaking, and we're in Spanish 1, and that it was just amazing. It is a little intimidating at first because if you're not fluent in Spanish, then you don't really understand, what's going on. But the students are so adaptable, and they get to the point where they can explain to their friends, their parents, whoever, what they're talking about. I think we were talking earlier about the League of Women Voters, and we had our group that actually came, and we had one student come up and say hello to everyone and welcome them in Spanish, and then we had the interpreter come up and say it in English so everyone would understand, and it was just precious. Yeah. I mean, it really was. But it's amazing to watch.
What do you say to parents who are thinking about it, but they have a little worry? They feel like there might be too much lag, and their student, they want them to kind of grow in the English, even though that's the first language. They want them to become better readers right now in English. What do you say to them to say this is really still going to benefit you both ways, English and Spanish?
Come see them.
Come see them.
Yes. Call us and let us take you to a school where you can go in a classroom and see what's going on. Because I think you can hear it be talked about. I heard it. But when I saw it in person, it changes everything.
Wow. Yeah.
It really does, to be able to see. And the students are confident. You can see their confidence because they know that they're doing well. And there's a lot of, because it's an oral language, there's a lot of back and forth communication that has to occur. So they become comfortable with that, and that even builds their confidence even more.
Yeah. And we also could connect a family to some of our current families and get we're glad to connect prospective parents to a current parent and just parent-to-parent talk, and talk about the experience in the program and those kind of things. So if anybody's interested, we'd love to and right now the program is at all of our elementary schools. So this year it launched at our 3 remaining schools. So every elementary school has it, so you can literally just, pick your neighborhood school and we can take you to a classroom. And right now at our 3 new schools this year, the program only exists at kindergarten and first. So these students have only been in the program for about a month, but they're actually speaking Spanish. So if you wanted to see it now at Sheep Harney, P.W. Moore, or Weeksville, even though those kids have only been there a month, those kids are speaking Spanish. They're having basic, and they've only been there a month. Yeah. So the program moves so fast, and it's that young brain. The brain of a 5-year-old can do this. The brain of a 39-year-old can't. So that's the way it works. It's the wiring of the brain at 5 and 6. And so we'd love to have anybody come and see it.
Yeah, you're listening to the ECPPS show. Of course, with me right now is Board Chair Ms. Angela Cobb, as well as Superintendent Dr. Keith Parker. ECSU Chancellor Dr. S. Keith Hargrove Sr. has prioritized partnerships when it comes to the campus and the university, especially within our community, and that obviously includes ECPPS. Superintendent Dr. Parker, I'm sure you and Chancellor Hargrove stayed connected since he arrived back in May. What excites you the most about your continued collaboration with Elizabeth City State University?
That's a great question, and one, just so excited to work with Chancellor Hargrove and to see the passion and excitement that he's cultivating as we think about increasing partnerships in the future of the university. So while he's been here for a minute, I just want to say how great we are to have him join us over the summer. I think, when you think about Elizabeth City, we are uncommon for a rural community our size, in the sense of we're the home to 3 institutions of higher education: ECSU, MACU, College of the Albemarle, and the home to the largest pre-K-12 public school system in the region. That's a huge commitment for a community of 40,000 residents. And so what that says about us as a city and as a county is that over the past 100 years, the people who've lived here, that we now have the legacy, our grandparents, grandfathers, is that they cared enough about education that they created these institutions. They saw education as a gateway to a better life. And so we're unique in that sense, and it's not common to have these many institutions in a rural community. So we're unique in that sense, but we also have to just keep prioritizing to invest in ourselves. And so one thing that excites me, and the Chancellor and I have talked about this, we have a very strong partnership right now with the university with our in the College of Education. Mm-hmm. One of our board members, Dr. Sheila Williams, is chair of the Department of Education and an educator herself. But we have a program where many of our teacher assistants who have not had 4-year bachelor's degrees have been able to get fully funded through grant funding a 4-year bachelor degree through Elizabeth City State and come back and teach for us. They've been able to get that while they've been a teacher assistant. Wow. So they're working and getting the coursework. It's been paid for, and now they're teachers. So that's a way of taking our own people, working with the university, and then getting people to come back in classrooms. That's one example. We also now have a new aviation academy that we've launched this year, and we have got a really strong partnership with Dr. Ruat and the aviation department, and we have got a cohort of kids that are going to move. Some of them will move toward getting a pilot's license their senior year. And through some grant funding we just received from the university through Dr. Ruat, we're going to be able to install simulation devices at Northeastern. For some of our students that are interested in a pilot's license, they'll be able to get it right here in the university. And we've made a commitment that we're going to fund the 40 hours of flight time required to get that. And Wonderful. So if you're in our aviation academy, you want to get a pilot's license, you be able to go to that point. It won't cost you anything. And so, that's a huge opportunity. That's made possible through the partnerships here. So Elizabeth City has really all it needs to grow and move forward, most of which is already right here. And the more we keep strengthening these partnerships, reinvesting in ourselves, then I think that really is the key to what the future looks like. And I mean, you've grown up here, so I know, Angela, you've got experience of seeing this happen, and maybe even where we could go.
And I think about the Aviation Academy, especially when I look at the opportunity where a student could, in middle school. We had some middle schoolers not too long ago, 7th graders, that had a chance to fly, never been in an airplane. So in middle school, if that happened to you and you had that opportunity, and you might think, I would like to do something in aviation. You don't have to leave Elizabeth City. You could be in the Aviation Academy at Northeastern High School. You could come to Elizabeth City State and continue your studies in aviation, and then you have an opportunity maybe to get have a career at the Coast Guard base, at the Norfolk Airport. I mean, within an hour you could live in Elizabeth City and commute to Norfolk for your career. So having that opportunity really it's amazing to be able to see that pathway come to fruition.
Yeah, those partnerships, of course, with ECSU, COA, MACU, I mean, having it all right here in Elizabeth City, there's not too many places that can say that they can have that. So it's great to work, and the partnerships that we have has been outstanding. One of those partnerships is also with Centera, and I think that's something that I wanted to talk a little bit about, because you expressed your excitement about the partnership with Centera. What opportunities will this collaboration bring to the community here in the near future?
Well, great question, and I do want to say that the excitement, the energy, the vision that Chancellor Hargrove is cultivating with ECSU is hugely inspiring. I think equally inspiring is the vision that Centerra President Teresa Watson has for what healthcare can look like for our community. And I can tell you that President Watson is the most active, engaged hospital president I have ever seen. I mean, she is so engaged with our school system that she knows many of our students on a first name basis, and she's at events of ours. She and the chancellor were at our back to school teacher convocation. But Centerra really has made a commitment to be a community partner, and so the investment that President Watson has made in us and her staff, I think, really is just proof that their commitment is something they care about. But we've been dialoguing for over a year about how we can expand access to health care for our students and staff. And we all know of the shortages of providers in Elizabeth City right now, and that's not the inability of us to hire people. The funding's there. It's just that there is not enough physicians and medical professionals, and that impacts the whole community. And so in the month of October, we don't have an exact date, but in the month of October, about a year of work and planning would not have been possible without the advocacy of President Watson. We're going to launch at Pasquotank County High School a telehealth room in the school. It's fully funded by Centerra, a major investment on Centerra's part for us. But this room will be staffed by Centerra with a nurse and medical professional, will be inside the school. Any student on the north side of town, Pasquotank County High School, Elizabeth City Middle School, or Northside Elementary, will be able to access the room at no cost. Either insurance will pay for the visit, or it will not cost them to get an initial screening. One good case study of this room will be a student may have a sore throat. They may go to their teacher and say, my throat hurts. Student could go to the telehealth room. There'll be a nurse in there. The nurse could swab the student's throat to run a strep test, could run the test right in the room, and if in fact that student were to be diagnosed with strep, a physician assistant or a pediatrician, an MD, would be on the telehealth screen, could review that, prescribe an antibiotic right there. When the student's parent comes to pick the student up, student's ready to go home, but we also hand the parent a prescription for an antibiotic. On the way home, the parent goes by CVS, picks the prescription up, the kid's back in school in 2 days. Wow. So, that's an example of how the telehealth room will work.
And not just that, when you think about thinking about it from an educator perspective, you think about the opportunity for our staff.
Oh, yes.
If staff needed to get an appointment, then you've got to try to figure out how to fit that into your life and maybe take a half a sick day or something. So it gives our staff an opportunity. And, knowing the dedication of educators, if they couldn't get an appointment at the doctor for 2 days, they'd probably still come to work because that's just life. And so having that opportunity also for them will help us, going back to that whole wellness piece. If you're well, then you're more ready to be productive.
I agree.
That's solid. And I'll add quickly there to the chair's point about wellness. Through our partnership with Centerra, and all of our staff will be able to access this telehealth room, even though it's initially starting with the 3 schools on the north side for students. The staff in the entire district will be able to access that. So really excited about that. But to demonstrate Centerra's commitment to wellness for us, we're hosting a professional learning conference for all of our teachers and staff on October 6th at Northeastern. It's a teacher work day that day. It's the 3rd year we've hosted that conference. And Centerra is going to be on site with their mobile mammogram van, and they're going to be offering free screenings to our staff on that day. So staff will be able to sign up and get a screening. And then our school nurses, in partnership with Pasquotank County Health Department, will be on site that day. And our staff will be able to sign up and get a free flu shot and a free COVID shot if they would want to. And our nurses will be on site that day, and that won't cost our staff a penny because that'll be funded through the state health plan. And so that's just another example of how we have everything we need already in the city. You know, we've just got to integrate our resources and come together. And I see that happening in so many different areas. But, you know, you can't live up your full potential if you're not healthy and well. You know, vitality is a big part of this work, because education is, you know, our educators carry a weight. They carry a heaviness sometimes. They carry a burden. There's a huge responsibility. I mean, you're in the charge. You know, the care of young people is your charge, and that's a serious responsibility. And so we've just got to continue to do things like this and more things like this to make sure we've increased the vitality of our folks. You know, your spirit has got to be as healthy as, you know, your mind. You know, you got to invest in yourself, and I think this is an example of how we're trying to do that.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Again, you're listening to the ECPPS show, available online at WRVS899.com. Just like ECSU, ECPPS remains committed to ensuring the safety of everyone who visits any of the campuses within the district. New safety measures have been put in place for future events, especially the athletic events, because there's a lot of people that show up, all the football games and upcoming basketball, volleyball, whatever it may be. Take a little bit of time and explain these measures, why they were necessary, especially at the sporting events.
Yeah, great question. So first thing I'll say is, over a week and a half ago, our continued thoughts and prayers go out to our friends in Tarboro. But for anyone that's not aware, unfortunately, at the Southwest Edgecombe High School versus Tarboro game in Pine Tops 2 weeks ago, somebody brought a weapon into the football stadium and discharged that weapon and shot someone. Thankfully, it was not tragic, and the person that shot is expected to make a full recovery. But, you know, that event certainly is, along with the increased gun-related acts of violence in our community and also our state and nation, quite frankly, you know, is a moment for us we took a moment to seriously reflect and review what can we do more of to ensure that everybody that comes on our campuses are safe. And so we worked with local law enforcement after you know, some of these recent events, particularly the one in Tarboro, reviewed our safety protocols from top to bottom, and we identified areas where we could enhance security. And so a couple of those things are, one, we've switched out the metal detectors at our gates to our football and football stadiums and our gymnasiums, to replace those with weapons detection systems. And so those systems are an advanced level of screening, and so they screen beyond metal, and they screen for weapon or weapons that would do harm to folks. So it's a higher level of screening. We are moving toward a preference of a no bag policy, but if anybody would need to bring a bag for personal health reasons, it has to be clear, and it can't be any bigger than 12 by 12. And so the clear bag or no bag policy is going to significantly help us with decreasing wait times to get through the screening, but also ensuring more safety for everybody that's coming in. And then we've also increased the number of security professionals at each of our events. And so that ensuring that our perimeters are adequately secure and that we have active presence of law enforcement at events is a part of this as well. So, and the final thing I would add is we are asking parents that any student that's 8th grade or below has to be accompanied by an adult if they come into the property. And a big part of that is we want to make sure that our security professionals, law enforcement, and school administrators are able to focus on event security and operations and are not sometimes managing and supporting students or children that are 8th grade or below that need some supervision that may not have had that. And so for any families where some of these things may have caused initial inconvenience, it's not our goal at all to inconvenience folks. We want people to come enjoy games, cheer on teams. We want all of that. But we also see and feel a responsibility to do everything in our power to make sure that we've ensured safety at the events. And that's where these measures are coming from. So, Chair.
You asked me earlier about the balance between being an educator versus being on the board. This is one instance where that is so beneficial. The board fully supported everything that Dr. Parker and his team have done to enhance security. And as we were dialoguing back and forth about these new security measures, I have a completely different perspective because I have been that high school principal in that football stadium. And so I know specifically the amount of responsibility that the administrators, especially, and the two assistant principals and the principal in that building, carry of the community, because the Northeastern High School and Pasquotank County High School are community events when they have football games, when they have basketball games, and we want them to be. That's one of the beautiful things that makes our school district and those two high schools bond with the community. And so we want that to happen, but there is such a responsibility on the administrative team, the law enforcement officers that are out there working those games. It is huge. And so knowing it from that perspective gives me a little bit of a different insight to be able to talk through some things. And as these measures have come up, we're really thankful. To add on further to what Dr. Parker said about the young people coming in that are under high school age, one of the things that I think has always been my concern is if, God forbid, there was an event that happened, you have in the past have had a lot of younger students out there with no supervision that ultimately we would be responsible for, finding out who they belonged to, making sure they were safe, getting in touch with people, and that's adds a lot of more responsibility to what already has to take place there. So I think these security measures, again, we're being proactive. We do not want to have to wait for a situation to occur and then react to it by stiffening the restrictions then. We want to make sure our community is safe, our students are safe, and that everybody come out and enjoy a wholesome evening of athletics. And so hopefully our community sees that and understands that and adapts with us to make that a better and safer environment.
Yeah, well said.
I think the community will definitely understand these measures, and I think these measures are important to have, and I think they're going to benefit everyone. So kudos to all of you for making that happen. I think the safety is priority. If you want to learn more about these measures, you can go online to ecpps.k12.nc.us to see more about everything that we've talked about here today. And there's been a lot of positives, and there's going to be a lot more positives that we're going to talk about during the ECPPS show every month. And again, if you have questions for us, we want to answer some of those questions and make sure that we are informing you as much as we possibly can. So you can send your questions to WRVS-FM@gmail.com, and hopefully we can answer your questions during the show. Dr. Parker and Ms. Cobb, thank you so much for making this show happen. I think this is going to be a wonderful collaboration between us, and I look forward to the next few months as we continue to make this show everything that it can be.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us, Clay. It's been a pleasure.
The ECPPS podcast is powered by Elizabeth City Pasquotank Public Schools in collaboration with the Elizabeth City State University Department of Radio and Television Services. Recorded and produced at WRVS Studios on the campus of ECSU.